I introduce myself again for your case. My name is Tamás Maciej. I work for a Hungarian conservative weekly and political site called Mandiner. I'm the moderator of this conversation. We have, actually I will check the time, we have, the organizers asked us that we should stick to the 40-minute conversation, and you will have about 5 or 10 minute time to ask questions when we finish it. The topic is what I got. Organizers suggested that it should be the title, A Tough Road to Take, Western Balkans and the EU. So it's enlargement. The topic is enlargement, which is a very important thing. All of you understand the importance of this. The EU, like 20, 30 years ago, found it a strategic importance to expand to the east and the south, to the Balkan, maybe to solve the old issues like the Balkan, Yugoslavian wars, and to stabilize the region, incorporating these countries into the EU like they did to Hungary and the other countries. And my first question, and I forgot to introduce the guest, so I continue with this. Ármás Julianna on my right hand, research fellow at the Hungarian Institute of International Affairs. Thank you, Julianna, for coming. And from Poland, Maciej Tyburski, expert from Warsaw Institute. Thank you. Both of them experts on Balkan issues. Maciej is a little bit China and Russian issues, and I will attach to this topic too. My first question then I wrote in a Reuters on AP a news site. Then 2 days ago on Tuesday, the EU Council adopted a plan worth of 6 billion euros for Western Balkans to speed up the enlargement process, which for me means that the EU is very unsatisfied with the quality and the speed of the enlargement process. And my first question would be an overall question, both of you. What are the reasons that these 6 countries are a little bit way behind of the schedule?
Okay, then shall I will start. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, I think that 40 minutes won't be enough to answer that given question, but it's really on point, and the causality that this package was again accepted may refer to the fact that this unsatisfactory manner of the European Union and why they are really behind. I would say that the answer to that is really twofold. From one point of view, from the European point of view, we need to differentiate between the European point of view and the Western Balkan point of view. The European point of view is that we let them stay behind. We let them remain in that state, and we let them believe that one day they could join the European Union, they could join the community, but really no visible and no big steps can be seen over the past 10 to 20 years. From the Western Balkans point of view, of course, there are structural and institutional imbalances and problems, because we're still talking about transitional countries. We're still talking about countries who might have been fighting with each other even 20 years ago, thinking of the Kosovo War, for example, or not 20, but a bit more. It's a rocky road. It's a difficult road, and when we outline reforms, and we outline criteria, and we outline the requirements they need to fulfill, they tend to be the same, which were the requirements for example, Western European countries. But we need to make a difference between Western European, Central European, or Southeast European countries, because they have different paths, they have different difficulties, they have different institutional for institutional backgrounds. So I think that again, this is also a problem. And I'm not saying that we are aiming for a not a merit-based integration. I'm not saying that, of course, because meeting the requirements is of utmost importance. But we need to realize that each countries are different. Each countries are unique, and that's why they need a unique approach.
Okay, thank you very much. I will try not to repeat too much because this was really, really well said. But maybe I will start with short historical overview when we speak about the possible of EU enlargement with Western Balkans. In 2003, 21 years ago now, during the Thessaloniki summit in Greece, it was stated clearly that the Balkans will become an integral part of the European Union. It's been 21 years now. We are still striving for enlargement. Then 2014, the beginning of Berlin process. 10 years now, no enlargement. We are still in the process of reforms for Western Balkans. Few days ago, we had 20 years since the biggest enlargement of EU from 2004, Poland, Hungary, and the rest of the countries. And then in 2013, it was the last enlargement of the European Union. So 11 years without any enlargement. And still, as we've said before, there are still many, many reforms to be introduced. These are the current shape of European Union. It's not the one that we had in 2004 and before. Because let me remind you that when we joined in 2004 together with Cyprus, Cyprus was a country with internal disputes, not fully controlling the territory. And even though the European Union let Cyprus join the structure, now European Union has extreme requirements for the Western Balkans. Recently, Bosnia and Herzegovina, that is the closest currently, fulfilled the security and foreign policy requirements. But there are still many more reforms to be introduced. But because of Russian invasion on Ukraine, European Union started to review the formalized enlargement policy, which might be an open door for Balkan countries. But here I would like to state that the enlargement of Ukraine and the Western Balkans, those are two different topics. So for Western Balkan leaders, I wouldn't be so sure that the requirements will be lowered for them. Second of all, financial perspective for enlargement. Western Balkans do not state an economic challenge for the EU. This is, even though there are many countries, they have small economies, smaller size. So in comparison to Ukraine, this is not an economic challenge for the European Union. The estimated cost for future enlargement is $250 billion for all of the countries together with Ukraine, from which $186 billion will be for Ukraine, plus the costs of rebuilding the country. So the economy or demography is not the problem. The problem is the rule of law, the corruption, the counterterrorism, the organized crime. European Union works on a topic of money for reforms, enlargement for reforms. So as soon as all of the strict requirements will not be fulfilled, I wouldn't hope for enlargement before 2030, even though Charles Michel mentioned in few previous months that by 2030 we will have a new member of EU. I personally do not believe that, looking at the pace with which EU is cooperating with Balkan states on the enlargement policy. So maybe I will stop here and I will continue on the next questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. You mentioned political requirements and constitution, etc., security, and I would stick to the economy maybe, because if you see the articles on this year, for example, I checked some on the Google, And I find most of the articles about the economic convergence missing there. And the Balkan countries complain that the Western investors don't occur, so they don't go there. The Chinese come. We will talk about it a little bit later. So how can the West help these 6 or maybe 5 Balkan, because Kosovo is a special one, these 6 countries to get a bit of a faster pace, to get to the level of GDP, economic growth? So what's the solution? Because the Western Balkans, again, complaining the West doesn't help them enough, and the West complains that they don't pick up the pace.
I will start again, and then you may continue, especially with the Chinese influence. Yes, again, it's really true, and I would add to that yes, foreign direct investments are lacking in the Western Balkans. Of course, there are really great headlines that Continental again opened a factory in Újvidék, or I don't know, a research and a development center, or etc., just to mention actually a Western investor. But the main problem, I think, that low value added investments are actually coming to the countries, but that's not enough anymore. So if we look at the numbers, the GDP growth is kind of moderate, so it's growing again after the many years of crisis. I mean, the pandemic and then the war, and with that the inflation. So there is a moderate growth in those numbers, and there is a moderate growth in the numbers of the FDIs. But the quality of those investments are not meeting the criteria that should be when it comes to actual development and actual catching up of the Western Balkans. And it has severe consequences, because for the people of the Western Balkans, these kinds of investments, these kinds of employment possibilities are not enough anymore. So they are leaving because the money is not enough. Yes, there are actually jobs available, because actually there is a workforce shortage in the Western Balkans, just like in Hungary. But because the people left the country, because those opportunities are just not enough anymore for them. So yes, and who leaves the country? The highly qualified and maybe the younger generations. So this economic status, this economic outlook of the Western Balkans is really terrifying, I would say, because yes, people are leaving because of many reasons, but this is one of the most important one. So I think that one of the main solutions would be just bringing high value added investments, and just funding, or just I don't know, just highly high added value workplaces, and not thinking of factories anymore, but maybe business centers or other things like that.
Thank you. As we've said, speaking about accelerating of economies, this is an important topic. Of course, competitiveness, attractiveness for investors is crucial indeed, but honestly speaking, the biggest development of Balkan economies would start together with EU accession. Before the enlargement, I wouldn't be so optimistic for Western investments in the Balkan countries, especially that for such economies, there is a risk of either making reforms, then going to EU and getting investments, or without requirement of rule of law, corruption, reforms and stuff, we can receive funds from other countries, from China, Saudi Arabia and stuff, that do not put that focus on the reforms. They only invest and bring the money. So this is the other important issue to be addressed here. I would also mention here the importance of economic cooperation in the region of the Central Eastern Europe. Especially here, I would like to draw your attention to the format of the 3Cs initiative, which aims to accelerate the economies by investments, especially from infrastructure and digitization. So this might be a good start to accelerate the Balkan economies, the building railways, roads, building digital links with them, to bring them closer to Europe. But the other important point is energy, because looking at the EU climate policy, I don't think the Balkans are ready for energy reforms coming with membership in EU. This is really, really costly. Those are millions of euros for ETS systems if we do not have the green-friendly energy sector. So here I would put this question just aside, that the future energy policy of EU towards Western Balkans may either speed them up and make them competitive, or slow them down if we will have really strict requirements and the need for reforms that have to be introduced before joining the EU. So I may stop here and we'll come back to the topic later.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add a remark that, actually, when you'll be mentioning the third country investors, so it's kind of a vicious circle. As one of the previous foreign ministers of Montenegro once came to us for a meeting, and we asked him about the Chinese investments on the highway. And yes, actually, he was really pragmatic. I mean, he said, of course, we want to join the EU, but without a highway, we cannot join the EU. And from the EU, we are not getting any money, so we are asking the Chinese. The Chinese are giving the money, good. We are about to have a highway, good. And then we can join to the union, good. So, of course, it's much more... it's not that simple, but I just remember this story and his pragmatism that from one point of view was really eye-opening.
Yes, well said. So we need the money to develop. That is fair enough. So if we do not have a chance to receive money from any other source, we need to somehow build the economy, build the competitiveness and develop, right? And there is the question of having the Balkans surrounded by member states. The Balkans are like a gray area on a map, the blank space. And we need to somehow manage this blank space. Either we, as the EU, have to manage that, or Chinese investors have to manage that, or the possible influence may come from Russia and we'll manage that. So we need to reconsider how to manage this region. And my strong recommendation would be, of course, to speed up the enlargement process. And just one more remark before we come to the next question. Speaking about the development, the building business centers in the Balkan countries, the Albania is an interesting example because it has a few million inhabitants. But in general, in the world, we have twice or three times as many Albanian people living because all of them migrated due to economic reasons. It's same with other Balkan citizens, that they are willing to join the EU. There is political will, but a lot of brains drained to the West and to the European Union. So this is like a domino effect. As I mentioned, 2003 Thessaloniki summit, then Berlin process. It's been years, so people are migrating. So this is not good for society because they are looking for chances in external countries, not contributing to their own economies. So that is another problem from the economic and social point of view.
We mentioned China so many times that I'm asking finally the question, what was the Chinese interest in the Balkan countries, so the region. We know that this region has a geopolitical value, of course, for the EU. We mentioned that, but China is very far from here. Maybe China wants to get to the European market through the Balkans as a one step to the second. I'm interested in your opinion.
Yes, you're right. China is very far, but as we know from the history, this is far located empire with imperial perspectives. The new Silk Road, investments of China in Central Europe, the many initiatives, the so-called 16+1, 19+1, which means China plus tens of countries from the region. There is one main reason, which is influence in the region and being a counterpart to the EU, having a strong impact on the region. The similar situation took place years ago in Africa, where China competed with US over the investments. But the difference was US investments were solid, long-term, and pretty expensive, whereas Chinese investments in Africa were cheap, poor quality, but done over a really short period of time. And here I can expect the same situation, that the Western economies or Central Europe economies will be competing with Chinese investors coming to our region, especially in such tough geopolitical times when many countries cut their contracts for energy with Russia, which means higher spendings on energy. And as it was mentioned during the panel in the party tent, for example, in Poland, in my hometown, 20 years in EU, home country, 20 years in EU now, we still import a lot of green energy installations from China. So we can see this impact not only when it comes to trade, to direct investments, but also when it comes to import of crucial installations for our economic and energy sector. And this will only grow because China is still expanding, it's building its power, building its influence, of course, cooperating with Russia. But from the perspective of Central European citizens, the ties with China are way more safe than the ties with Russia, which is aggressive country. China is not aggressive in geopolitical way. It's not going for a conflict. It's going for influence, impact, and building ties with countries in Central Europe to be a counterpart for the EU and states in the region.
Well, I will try to continue on that thought, but obviously I'm really not big on China. But yeah, basically the first straight answer to that question, of course, is building infrastructure to get the goods from the port of Piraeus to the European Union. And the shortest way for that, for China, for exporting, is the Western Balkans, of course. So that's one thing. Another thing that, of course, investing in infrastructure development is always making good money. So that's another plus. But I would add to that when we are looking at the Chinese influence over the Western Balkans and the looming Chinese influence on the Western Balkans, because of this reason, China is actually interested, or should be interested, that the countries of the Western Balkans join the European Union sooner. It's sooner the better, basically. So because they would be part of the single market, yes, it's just it would just provide many advantages for the Chinese export. But on the other hand, China is getting more and more political influence in the Balkans. So it's not barely an economic footstep and not just about the Chinese exports anymore. And partly because of Russia's state in Europe, and Russia is basically just started getting out of the Balkans. So the country does not hold its previous influence anymore. Still, it's a question whether China replaces Russia entirely, looking at, for example, the identity influence of Russia, especially in the Serbian society. So that's another question I would not want to open at this point. But yes, it's getting a more and more political influence, and it's easy because countries or leaders of the Western Balkans, especially looking at Aleksandar Vučić, the Serbian president, is known for its multivectoral foreign policy, meaning that that holding good relations with the West and with the East as well. And with the East, nowadays it means China. And I think it's really a symbolic. It was really a symbolic event of the visit of Xi Jinping to Belgrade. That he visited the Serbian capital Belgrade on the day when the Chinese embassy was bombed during the Kosovo War. So
25th anniversary. 25th.
Yes. So it was May the 7th. Yes. So. I just wanted to add to, well, again, that's a question, that's an open question, that what's the will behind that move, and what's the message to the West behind that move from Serbia and from China as well.
It's very interesting. Serbia is the most interesting country among the six, I think, because of these reasons. And I would stick one more question to this, because you mentioned the Russian influence. Of course, Serbia and Russia has a historic tie. The Slavic nations, Russia is a big supporter of the Serbian nation against maybe the separatist Kosovan movement. And economically, of course, and China appeared some years ago, building the Belgrade-Budapest railway and other investments in Serbia. So my question is, wouldn't it be an obstacle in a Serbian European membership that Serbs are very much friendly to the influence powers of East, like China and Russia? Isn't it an obstacle, or EU can live with it?
Oh, okay, thank you very much. Well, again, really good question. And I would say that a man can have friends. So a country can have friends, a country can hold good relations to many directions. Of course, when it comes to, for example, free trade area or free trade agreements with another country, namely with China, then it cannot be at the same time when someone is part of the European Union. So yes, there are technical obstacles, of course, but I assume that the question is not really poked to the technical obstacles, but rather at the political level. Well, or maybe taking one step back, and one technical obstacle that, yes, actually, Serbia is the only country from the Western Balkans 6 who has not aligned the sanctions of the European Union against Russia. So yes, technical obstacles do count, and at one point they become political obstacles. But it's I wouldn't say that it's really that aspect that the European Union is really taking into account from time to time. I think it can be an obstacle it can be an obstacle at the level of society. So when we are looking at the people, and yes, Serbia was mentioned, or Serbia was underlined in that question. Yes, there is a strong connection, and the historical, linguistic, religious ties with Russia or the Eastern Orthodox is really strong, really part of the identity of the Serbian society or the Slavic society in the Western Balkans. So from that point of view, or at that level, I think it's more of an obstacle, or it's more of a problem that should be, that should be not changed, but yes, an identity cannot be changed overnight. But the two ideas, I mean, being part of Europe or the European Union, and preserving our identities, well, at some point should meet in the middle if they really think that they would like to be part of the community at one day.
Okay, I'll be brief here, not to repeat too much, but it's indeed it is an obstacle. It will be an obstacle, but it's not an unmanageable obstacle. It all depends on the perspective of Brussels, to be honest. Definitely, Serbia will not be one of the first Balkan countries to join the EU. I would expect to be one of the last countries to join the EU. One of the first, maybe it will be Bosnia and Herzegovina. But on the other hand,
because of Kosovo or because of the Chinese-Russian influence?
I think as for now, looking at the geopolitical situation, might be because of those ties. But on the other hand, the topic of Western Balkans in the EU is one of the few topics that we are cohesive among member states. Even recently, the statement from German head of diplomacy was that we need to move forward with the topic of Western Balkans. We may differ on migration, we may differ on climate, we may differ on any other, on agriculture. But when it comes to Balkans, we are cohesive because the enlargement procedures and enlargement policy is a crucial pillar of EU security policy, especially in the current dangerous geopolitically times. So this is in the hands of Brussels, how to force the Serbia to introduce reforms, and which reforms. The same as other countries, only anti-corruption, rule of law and stuff, or due to the conflict on the east, maybe EU will introduce more points, more crucial bullet points to be filled by Serbia in that regard. We don't know it yet. We'll see what happens in the next years, or even in the next 10 years with this pace. So yeah, we are all in the EU for Serbia in our organization, but of course it's in the hands of Brussels how fast and how will we do it.
Definitely these 6 countries sooner or later will join the EU, maybe in 10 years' time. That time they will somehow change the dynamics of the EU politics. Maybe for the interest of the Visegrad 4, we will see. But how do you evaluate this? Because of the social, the political, and other mentality, they will bring new life to the EU, but other interests than the Western countries. Will it have the Polish or the Hungarian standpoints on political issues like migration, war, and anything? But war hopefully will be over at that time. But do you think the Visegrad 4 will come up stronger with joining these 6 countries?
I would think that it definitely will change the dynamism in the European Union. Just think of the fact that one day, hopefully, another 6 members will be part of the community. That would mean over 30 members of the European Union. So just imagine to decide on a question with that many members. Yes, it's just, I mean, 6 more, but still 6 really different more. So yes, we'll cope with that when it comes. But actually, I do believe that for Hungary, it would mean as many advantages I just at this point cannot list. So, of course, when it comes to regional cooperation and the V4, well, it's always tricky because we are covering the V4 are covering a much bigger area on the map than the Western Balkans 6. So from some point of view, we have different challenges. But from the Hungarian point of view, just thinking of the security issues, the new type security challenges. Just you mentioned migration, but other natural disasters, so something like that we really need to a partner, because we do feel at the end of the Schengen border that we do feel that sometimes we are quite alone. So yes, that would be many advantages, and that would mean that we accepted countries to the community, that we actually share historical ties, and we have a common historical background as well, not just with, for example, Austria, thinking of the monarchy or something like that. So yes, and those countries joined the community, that those whose accession we consequently supported for like 20 years. So I would say that I do believe, or I do hope that especially from the Hungarian point of view, it would be really beneficial. But when it comes to regional cooperation, it would give a hope for new regional cooperation formats, or it would give a chance to just rethink the regional cooperation opportunities.
Exactly, we share similar culture, similar history. We are similar, but let's have a small forecast for the upcoming years, the optimistic and the realistic one. Let's start with the realistic one. So, of course, the Balkans can strengthen the Visegrad cooperation, but looking at what's happening now in the world, even recently, we as a Visegrad group, we are divided when it comes to aid for Ukraine. Poland and Czech Republic are for military and economic aid, whereas Slovakia and Hungary are for economic aid. So imagining the future possible conflicts coming from either imperial tendencies of Russia or China, and having the Serbian example in mind, we can differ again in the EU and in the Visegrad group. But from the other point of view, the optimistic one, we would definitely share more and more investments on infrastructure. Digital links, energy infrastructure, stronger lobby, I hope, at the European Union Forum as a region, as a Visegrad plus Balkans format, or the Three Seas and Balkans and Visegrad together. So this would be really beneficial for the region, for lobbying on the EU Forum for our interest, right? So let's see what happens, but there are a few scenarios we need to consider.
Yeah, I have a timer, just recognize that. 6 minutes we have. I have one last question, and it's your turn to think about your questions. My last one is about the Kosovo issue, and a short answer I expect from you. That do you expect in maybe 5 years' time that the Serbian and Kosovan government can agree with a rational compromise with the help of EU, or it will be a long story with long negotiations and tension?
I really hope, but my realistic answer at this point would be no, and really short.
Yeah, same from my side. I hope for the best, but we'll see what happens. Same, we'll see what happens with the conflict on the east. We have a peace summit planned in Switzerland in June or July, but Russia already announced that it will not participate. So there is no point of peace talks without the main interested party. So we need two parties that want to deal and finish the issue, to close that clause. So I hope for the best, but we'll see what happens.
Thank you very much. And I don't know, was the technical issue that I just share the microphone? Any question? There is a microphone. If somebody has a question, please lift your hand. Then I choose somebody to ask. No questions? Okay, then I finish one last question. Yeah, I would. Okay, I'm just finishing the conversation, and I would be really interested because you mentioned that Serbia would be the last one. I was very surprised because
maybe not the last, but I don't suppose Serbia to be in first batch, unless EU decides to do a full enlargement as in 2004. But
because if we check the methods, we see the Montenegro, Serbia would be the first. They started earlier the negotiations. Bosnia Herzegovina just start now. Actually, they just got the green light, so they will start. Kosovo is it's a tricky question, and there is North Macedonia and Albania, the middle. Yeah. So is it the right order? What I'm saying?
Yeah, I will just clarify by what I've said before. I meant that if the Russian links becomes still an important part in Serbia or Serbian politics, Serbian internal affairs, then EU may react and postpone the possible integration. But if everything will go according to the plan and the proper reforms will be introduced and accepted, then of course I hope for a second or third biggest accession batch in the EU history with all of the Balkan countries together.
I don't dream of a second Big Bang enlargement circle, and I quite agree with your remark on Serbia being one of the last ones. I mean, yes, once back in the day, Serbia was a front runner with Montenegro, but yes, and Montenegro remained that, and Montenegro has actually a chance to join the European Union like in 5 years, and actually that's the plan of the new government. But after that, I would say Albania is really coming up. Actually, Albania has big plans joining the single market with this gradual integration concept, and then North Macedonia had some kind of good chances. Now we'll see what the new government will bring. Yes, and there is Serbia, Kosovo, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, and there are, with those countries, there are more looming outlooks, I would say, and I do hope that when it comes to Serbia, Serbia cannot join the European Union without resolving the Kosovo question. In order to resolve the Kosovo question, I would say we need 2 new leaders. So, I mean, that's the main problem. When then it's resolved, I would be really kind of happy, but I know it's really idealistic to join with Kosovo together. So.
This is the last sentence. Thank you very much. Somebody fainted here. Okay, thank you for the conversation. Very good analysis. Köszönjük szépen a figyelmet nektek is, és további jó fesztivál.
Köszönjük szépen.
Thank you.